the BBC was a private company, come on, it would have ceased to exist decades ago. I mean, covered up the biggest paedophile in the history of the UK, had a paedophile ring operating within it for decades. An interview which they illicitly obtained quite possibly caused the death of the late Princess Diana. I mean, come on, that disgraceful. But breaking right now, the BBC breached its own editorial guidelines more than 1,500 times during the height of the Israel-Hamas war, a damning report has discovered. This has been revealed by the Sunday Telegraph, which says the corporation has shown a deeply worrying pattern of bias against Israel. The authors of the report analysed 4 months of the BBC's output across TV, radio, online news, podcasts and social media. It was led by the British lawyer Trevor Anderson, who also found that Israel was associated with genocide more than 14 times than Hamas. Now, on Saturday, significantly, Danny Cohen, who is a former top BBC executive, warned that there is now a, quote, institutional crisis at the broadcaster and called for an independent inquiry into its coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. Now, I fully support that. But Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK, has concluded, also quite rightly, that the completely corrupted state regulator, the Ofcommunists, are not fit for purpose, given they ignore the Beeb's bias, even though it has been completely exposed by this report, while doing all they can to target the so-called right broadcast in this country, like focusing their attention on driving me off GB News. Watch what he had to say.
It is. Well, my view is that Ofcom, frankly, is not fit for purpose, and its treatment of other channels, such as GB News, compared to the way that it sort of that it mollycoddles the BBC, and you highlighted it there. The unfairness of the system, as Lucy said, that the BBC can basically self-regulate itself on behalf of Ofcom, and so surprise, surprise, it behaves as it does. We all knew that it was clearly biased in its reporting of the horrific war in the Middle East, and yeah, I think that Ofcom's got some serious questions to answer. At the very least, Ofcom should directly respond to complaints about the BBC. And yeah, the way they treat GB News and people like
I'm going to be devil's advocate on this as a journalist rather than a politician. You know, Ofcom has expressed concerns that people like you and people like Nigel might come on a channel and start campaigning.
But they didn't express any concerns about David Lammy, for example, a Labour MP, on LBC. So
no longer there, though.
If you're going to be
in office.
Yeah, but if you're going to be a regulator, you've got to deal with a fair and just and equal hand, and they patently haven't done that.
What's your view?
And Russell Quirk, there is absolutely no outrage whatsoever about this shocking display of bias from the BBC, and the Ofcommunists simply do not give a damn, because they are only there seemingly to drive anyone who's even slightly on the right off the mainstream media.
Yeah, in my opinion, Ofcom should be disbanded. I mean, Ofcom do serve. Richard Tice is absolutely right. They're not fit for purpose because they don't really suit a purpose. They don't solve anything. They don't serve a purpose. The fact that they are there to effectively filter content to the masses rather insults the intelligence of the masses, doesn't it? Because what they're effectively in place to do is to say, you're too stupid as a member of the public to understand that you're being campaigned to by Richard Tice or Nigel Farage or David Lammy, for instance. So therefore, we have to be in place to tell you what the balance is. We're not idiots. We don't need to have Ofcom to do that. Now, with the BBC, of course, the fact that we're not seeing huge outrage as a consequence of this report today. 1,500 instances of bias, which, by the way, is 5 instances of bias a day. 5 a day. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. I mean, if this was GB News or Talk, the fines that would be levied as a consequence of those indiscretions would be absolutely
They would be off air. I mean, they would just be off air. And I often say, Nick, actually, if the BBC was a private company, come on, it would have ceased to exist decades ago. I mean, covered up the biggest paedophile in the history of the UK, had a paedophile ring operating within it for decades. an interview which they illicitly obtained, quite possibly caused the death of the late Princess Diana. I mean, come on, they're disgraceful, Nick Buckley, aren't they?
The BBC and Ofcom do exactly what they're paid to do, which is to benefit the government. Hence why they won't change. Hence why they'll carry on doing what they're doing unless someone like Nigel Farage in Reform take power, because they're part of the establishment, they're part of the status quo. And the reason why we've not had much outrage on this report is as simple as this. We all know it. This isn't a surprise. This isn't news. We've known it for at least a decade that the BBC is a propaganda arm of the government, of the elite, of the far left. We see it every day. We've got ears, we've got eyes. And what we need to remember is a quote from Stalin. When Stalin said, "We don't let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas?" And that's what the BBC and Ofcom is all about.
Oh, yes. But they're actually moving to a much more chilling territory now with James O'Brien, the red-cheeked sociopath at LBC, which I now call the Labour Broadcasting Company, and Tony Blair, the psychotic former leader of this country who used misinformation to push us into an illegal war in Iraq, both now in some way calling for either full censorship and regulation of the internet and social media, or actually, let's just shut down X altogether. Watch this.
The question of jurisdiction as well. The server will be in one country, the person writing the message will be in another country. We've arguably seen this a little bit with the riots recently. But do you foresee a point in the not too distant future where other countries are going to have to follow Brazil's lead and take actual action against platform owners for the dissemination of disinformation?
Well, I certainly see a position where the world's going to have to come together and agree some rules around social media platforms. And I think that's, quite what the answer is and what the right system of regulation is, I'm not sure, but I'm sure there should be, and there's got to be, because it's not just how people can provoke hostility and hatred, but I think, and I don't know what the answer to this is. I'm just saying that I don't.
We can't carry on as we are.
But we can't carry on as we are, and I think the impact on young people, particularly when they got access to mobile phones very young, and they're reading a whole lot of stuff and receiving a whole lot of stuff that I think is really messing with their minds in a big way. And as I say, I'm not sure what the answer to it is, but I'm sure we need to find.
I mean, Russell Quirk, you speak of tyranny. Come on. And for those two to be talking about misinformation, because we know about Blair's misinformation, but what about James O'Brien's misinformation? Platforming. Carl Beach, who was the biggest fantasist in British history, who accused all of these completely innocent people of paedophilia when he was the paedophile. First, though, digestive issues are caused by a potential toxin that's in all of the, quote, healthy foods that scientists have been telling us to eat with a fraudulent food pyramid for the longest time. And this potential toxin causes digestive issues, according to Dr. Gundry, a world-renowned cardiologist. This is affecting millions of people nationwide. Warning signs include weight gain and fatigue and digestive discomfort, plus stiff joints, even skin problems, actually. Well, Dr. Gundry explains these side effects are often mistaken for normal signs of aging because digestive issues develop usually over a matter of years and sometimes even decades. I can assure you that the damage is probably caused by these health foods and is far from normal. The good news is you can easily help fix the problem from your own home. It's very simple. You just have to know which foods are actually healthy and which contain this hidden potential toxin. So you can find this yourself if you visit right now gutcleanseprotocol.com/outspoken. That's gutcleanseprotocol.com/outspoken. Now, you can see the QR code there on the screen, so you can just use that, enter the website, but I've also put the link in our show notes on YouTube and Rumble. because after years of research, Dr. Gundry has decided to release an informative video to the public. I've watched it. It's free and uninterrupted, showcasing exactly which foods you need to avoid. So go find that video at gutcleanseprotocol.com/outspoken and click on the link in the description below.
Yeah, two individuals that have been responsible for more misinformation and disinformation than just about any other two that I can think of, calling for regulation. But they don't mean regulation. And actually, like you, Dan, I think, and you, Nick, when I hear words from people like that that are of rules and regulations, it does send a shiver down my spine, because they don't really mean regulation or rules. What they mean is control. And what they really mean by control is that we should be doing, saying, and thinking what they believe is best for us. And of course, when there's dissenters, particularly now we've got social media, which is pretty inconvenient, really, for people like Keir Starmer and James O'Brien and Tony Blair, because people have a voice. So of course they will want it shut down. I mean, that's why you don't have Twitter in China or Facebook in Korea. I mean, you see a pattern emerging here.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And actually, Nick, just before I get you to respond, I have to play you my favourite new comedian, Andrew Lawrence, who, as James O'Brien, was able to sum up the madness of the situation just perfectly today.
All these people complaining on social media, these far-right Nazi fascists on Elon Musk's X platform, complaining about the state of things, whinging on about two-tier this, two-tier that. These people are an utter disgrace to the nation. Isn't it time we shut down the internet? Or at least just stop people from expressing opinions that I don't like? It's out of control, isn't it? All the misinformation on social media, people spreading facts that conflict with my worldview. This can't go on. People say, oh, we don't have freedom of speech in this country. Well, we do, but if you exercise it, you shouldn't complain if you then have to do a bit of prison time. We can't have people who aren't part of the left-wing liberal establishment just going around saying things in public whenever they like, regardless of the consequences. That's not how things work, is it? And look, you may disagree with me on that, but ultimately, that's only a demonstration of your own ignorance and racism. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of telling stupid people how right I am about everything. But it pays well, so let's open the phone lines. And all these...
Nick Buckley, this is how they think.
It is. I mean, LBC, well, we all know the internet's not perfect. Social media is not perfect. X is not perfect. You know, we know there's lies out there. We know people use it to promote their own agenda or to commit crime or to incite violence. We all know that to be true. What we need to understand is no matter what we do to control that, we'll end up in a worse place. Because the people you think or you hire to control the internet will always be the last people we should give that power to. So we'll end up in the worst place. That doesn't mean where we are now is perfect, because it's not. But I would rather have this open, free flow of information where we've got to be a bit more clever and we've got to work out what are the lies and let's take some personal responsibility on what we believe and what we don't believe. I'd rather be in that position than having someone being paid to tell me what's true and what isn't true. And it's worse than that, them being paid to make sure I never see what they don't want me to see, because in that grouping will be all the things I should have seen.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.